Gonna call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Hi everyone, it's very good to see you all. I believe Caleb is doing our land acknowledgement today.
I would like to acknowledge with respect that the land on where this meeting is taking place and the school that we go to and the work that we do is on the traditional land of the Colombian peoples and the Songhees and the Esquimalt and the Saanich people whose historical relationships continue with the land to this day. Personally, I grew up in Comox Valley First Nations territory. One of my earliest memories of interactions with the First Nations of this community was going to one of the big houses there, and they spoke about their traditional ways of communicating and having fire and potlatches, and inspired definitely an interest and a respect for the way that communication and cohabitation is excelled in the First Nation community in the Comox Valley. One thing that I really appreciate about the First Nations practices is the way that living with the land instead of against it, which is something that I really hold dear, and my actions towards sustainability as far as for the UVSS is one way of coming closer to decolonization, but I also would, my action item for myself is to take up a few offers of a few people to actually go and discuss within a local elder about things that, opinions that I have and things that I think I can learn, and actually really do that and reach out and have that engagement. That's my action item. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Moving on to the adoption of today's agenda. Are there any amendments to today's agenda? Watts?
I'd like to add a motion. I'd like to amend the agenda to add a motion under main motions, be it motion 2, to change the members of sub-occupants committee. Is that an okay way of phrasing that?
Yep. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Van Dyke, is there any discussion on this amendment? Perhaps, yeah.
Change it to what?
We'll talk about it. I'm just amending the agenda right now.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially the motion is to include the Peer Support Center and the Food Bank and Free Store in the sub-occupants committee membership, because they're currently not included.
And strike Byford.
Yes. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all in favor? Right. Motion 2 has been added to the agenda. Great. Are there any further amendments to today's agenda, Samson?
Yeah, can I move to include my board report in the agenda? I was, on Thursday when this was due, I was helping a friend in crisis, so I couldn't be here or submit it.
Do I have a seconder? Turker? Any discussion? All in favor? Right. The motion to amend the agenda passes. Are there any further amendments to today's agenda?
I would like to bring forward an amendment, and I've actually written down a few copies. It's a major capital purchase of $9,000 for an additional replacement convention oven. So that would be my motion.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Turker? Any discussion? All in favor? Right. The motion. The motion carries. Any further amendments to today's agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of today's agenda as amended? The motion carries. Moving on to the adoption of Board of Directors meeting minutes from October 7th. Do I have I don't require a seconder, I don't believe. Is there any discussion on minutes from last meeting? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting minutes from last meeting? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Seeing none, the motion carries. Moving on to presentations and announcements. There are no presentations. There is one announcement. The UVSS AGM is this Thursday at 2:30 in Vertigo, and we need your help. Volunteers will help greet students, check the voter list, hand out important documents, and count attendees. Please email Alana at com@uvss.ca if you can help for any portion of the meeting. Like the announcement said, it's really, really important that we have some volunteers at this meeting, or else they won't be able to take place. And I would really, really appreciate any help that you can provide. Even a shift of 15-20 minutes is helpful. Moving on to reports, if there are no further announcements. Moving on to reports, we have a report from our executive director.
Excuse me. Not really. Sabrina will be back thankfully tomorrow. She's been away for the last week and a bit, somewhere nice and warm, and so she'll be coming in with a tan. I'll be disliking her a little bit more since she provided her notice as well. But everything's been going along fairly well since she left. Nothing new to report.
Thank you. Moving on to 5B, a report from the Director of Finance.
I didn't schedule a report today. I think that might have just been an error in the agenda or something.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Moving on to 5C, reports from committees and councils. Is there a report from the Advocacy Relations Committee?
Yes. I'll just do a brief report, but if anybody else wants to add that was at that meeting, they can. So ARC donated $3,000 to the Little Big House to support the matriarch camp. I'm not going to see the rest. I don't want to butcher the name. And we discussed venture products in UVic bathrooms and who would be a rep on the executive director hiring committee. And we briefly discussed the new terms of reference policy for ARC, but we did not vote on it yet.
Thank you. Is there a report from Campaigns Committee today?
Yeah, so we've continued preparing for lobby days. Shay, Jelena, Jasmine, John, and myself will be beginning our lobby training with the Alliance of BC students this Friday. The training will end on Sunday, and then we'll be in meetings next week, lobbying for one new counselor per post-secondary institution, needs-based grants, and a few other things that I'd love to discuss with you if you're interested. These asks have been set out by the ABCS, and a lot of our contributions are in the backgrounder guides to kind of provide research through there. We have been conducting continued consultation on the menstrual products that UVic is giving away for free starting in November. So continue to be consulted on that. And through our Get Out the Vote and Divest working groups, having conversations in reflection of the Get Out the Vote campaign, and planning our final event, which is happening currently. And I invite you all to come to Fells or Vertigo afterwards to watch the election coverage. And Divest has a pretty big meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. where we're kind of deciding which tactics we're going to pursue. So I invite you all to come just across the hall to BO28 tomorrow at 2 p.m. to talk lots about the Divest initiative. As well, it's worth mentioning that Caleb has been doing lots of work on the Divest video that we're putting together, which is a 2-minute explanation of what Divest is and how it works.
Thank you. Moving on to Clubs Council.
I haven't had a clubs council since last time we reported at the last board meeting, but the next one will be November 4th.
Thank you. Course Union Council.
Yeah, same with Course Union Council. The next one will be on November 4th.
Okay. Electoral.
Yes. We're currently working on policy and still in the process of hiring a CEO. But there'll be more to report next board meeting.
Moving on to events.
Yeah, so we talked about, or we had our last meeting the day after the last board meeting, and there's another one tomorrow. Yeah, but we talked about the art night, the reading break shuttle bus, the potential for a concert in Carsa, and Giving Tuesday.
Thank you. Moving on to Executive Committee. At our meeting on October 17th, we discussed a sub-occupancy meeting regarding space allocation in the sub. We discussed lead director reports at the AGM, as well as just the AGM more in general. On October 10th, we talked about the election night viewing party that's happening in Felicitas and Vertigo tonight, as well as the Board of Governors' upcoming decision on negative screening, which is related to divest and their investments in fossil fuels. Moving on to finance and operations.
Things are going well. I think the finance portfolio right now is working on a presentation at the AGM for the budgeted and audited financial statements, so that's exciting. There's also a few other minor projects in the work, one of them being bringing in some kind of board game style cafe into the sub, so I'm going to look into purchasing some board games, seeing if we can put them. I think right now the plan is in Vertigo. Aside from that, same old projects. The next meeting is going to be on the 25th of October, so this Friday at 2:30.
Thank you. Moving on to member outreach and engagement. We have not met since the last board meeting. However, we have been tabling for the AGM. We're tabling tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that, trying to get folks to come out to our AGM so that we can make quorum, and that's so folks can come out and try and win a bike. As well as that, I'd like to take this opportunity to maybe just talk about other things that I've been doing with the outreach portfolio, even though it doesn't necessarily take place in the outreach committee. I've been working with the Saanich Council to amend bylaws that currently state that only 4 or less people who are not related can live in the same residence in the district of Saanich, which doesn't allow students to have reliable sources to housing, and it's been a big problem for students as of recently, so we're hoping to have that changed before the end of the year. I've also been working with counseling services to decrease wait times that students are facing. I'm presenting at the next counseling services meeting on November 5th, possibly in coordination with the Peer Support Center. I have been going around with my clipboard asking students what they'd like to see from the UVSS. That's been postponed recently during the outreach portion of the AGM. As well as I've been working with a lot of different university stakeholders trying to get more open educational resources used in UVic classrooms. Since May, we've saved students $232,500 per year with the investment that the UVSS made last year, along with the library, bookstore, LTSI, and campus services. And I'm hoping to have another funding round before the end of our term this year. Moving on to policy development, if there are no questions. The Policy Development Committee has not met since the last board meeting because it coincided. What did it coincide with? Watts, do you remember? It was the debate. It was the debate for all of the local candidates in the federal election. However, we'll be meeting next week to discuss clubs policy, among other things. Moving on to sub-marketing.
Things are going really well. There's a lot of exciting things in the work. I just sent out a plan to some members of the committee regarding the first business survey the UVSS has done since 2015. So hopefully that's going to go out sometime in November, and I think it's really promising. Aside from that, meetings are going to be on the next 3 Thursdays, so Thursday the 31st, November 14th, and then again on the 28th, and it's going to be at 2:30, so I really recommend people come. There's still some talk about doing some promotions for the social enterprise model. The graphics director and myself have been working on some tent cards that are going to be going around the Student Union building soon, as well as some posters. And then aside from that, we're actually going to be serving some sub food outside of the sub a few times over the course of November and then December. So similar to what was done at Campus Kickoff with the serving DAL in the Student Union building, we're going to try various sub products and just giving them away for free to students, educating them a bit about what the UVSS does. So if anyone's interested in any of that, please come by some marketing or message me.
Thank you. Moving on to sub-occupants. Sub-occupants met last Thursday, I believe. We discussed space allocation in the sub, considering that B120 and B122 are currently vacant. We voted on a motion at that meeting that will be going to the next Finance and Operations Committee on October 25th. The motion was to have SOC relocate to B122 and B120, as well as the Campus Community Garden reallocating to SOC's current space. And so, like I said, that will go to the Finance and Operations Committee on October 25th to be discussed there, and then it will be brought forward to the board most likely in November for a decision. Moving on to the International Student Relations Committee.
We've had our first meeting, we've reached quorum, which was one person, one was the total attendees as well. Don't worry about it, it was just a bad time for us. We're still planning on how to do more effective outreach, and we created our Facebook group, and we're planning on pushing out more advertisements through social media. Other than that, we talked about the policy goals for the committee and brainstormed about maybe bringing in more than one person next time.
Can I add to that?
Go for it.
Quorum is 2 people for September.
That was me plus one member.
Yes, but you said 1 person.
Yeah, one person attended, that's it.
Okay.
One person, I think?
I missed
2 people in total.
2 people
Okay.
and then 1 person during the summer.
Yeah, somebody's just, it's fine.
Okay, moving on to the food bank and free store.
So we went over a couple things: housekeeping, hiring a work study. There haven't been many applications yet. Oh, one thing that is for everyone is Stocktober. So Division of Student Affairs has like a contest among staff to see who can bring in the most pounds of food. And then on October 30th at 3, there's a weigh-in Vertigo. So the like different employee groups are going to show up and weigh their food, and whoever wins, I don't know what they get actually, but I'm sure they get something. So if anyone wants to go. And then some language changes are probably coming up. So we might be striking free store from the food bank because people are trying to bring in junk a lot, and it just wastes a lot of everybody's time. And moving forward on zero waste, so providing bulk products and ordering in bulk as part of the routine deliveries that happen already. And no updates right now on the Cultural Foods Fair, which makes sense because it's happening in like 2020 towards the end. So yeah.
Bert?
I heard there was going to be reusable bags.
Oh yeah, bring your bags. They don't have to be cloth, just reusable ones, not like plastic Walmart bags.
Oh.
Bring them, please.
And so
soon.
they're going to have a spot, and then people are going to be able to just take them, right?
I think so. Yeah, because people ask for bags a lot when they come in already.
Yeah.
So this way, it's kind of like the mug bank. If
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah.
collection of reusable bags, people can take them and bring back. So if you have reusable bags, please bring them to the food bank. That's everything.
Great. Moving on to the Peer Support Center.
I'm going to share this one a little bit with Hannah, but we talked about our programming for Wellness Week that the Rethink campaign will be collaborating with the Peer Support Center on. Wellness Week is what we've rebranded Mental Health Awareness Week as. That's happening in January. It's a regular event. We just changed the name. We spoke at committee on Friday about the Peer Support Center's volunteers' participation in the 5 Days of Action Living Room Cafe and what was the other event called?
Human Library.
Thank you. Human Library and the other involvement that they may have in the 5 Days of Action event. And their upcoming puppy therapy event this Friday at 1 p.m. in Vertigo. Sure, something like that. It'll be the afternoon of Friday in the sun. And then I'll hand it over to Hannah to talk about the event that she's doing.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a Lego workshop is what we're calling it, and it's gonna be happening on November 22nd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. and we're gonna have pizza, which will also include gluten-free and vegan pizza at the event. And we are currently working on getting a work order, so we have some graphics for the event to disperse people. As well, we've been trying to target international students and engineering computer science students for this event. So we've been brainstorming ways that we can reach out to those communities. So please attend. It'll be really fun.
Thank you. Moving on to reports from constituency organizations and NSU. The first is Jim.
I don't have too much new to report. I was able to attend the last collective meeting. I had a personal emergency and I was going to bed. So it sounds like we are renovating our library, which is pretty cool. And we got our logo finally, which is nice. We provided feedback to the UVic menstrual initiative, menstrual product initiative that I mentioned earlier. And yeah, Jelena may have more for the status of the workshops. But
Workshops coming along great. Getting in more. We've done one for a very, very like small limited group, and we're doing a bigger one for the 5 days of action, which is really, really exciting. They are coming along quite nicely, I would say, and look out soon because you may get the chance to experience one of these amazing workshops. If you're really lucky, I might even facilitate it.
Thank you. Moving on to the NSU.
So I have a number of things to report because I was absent at the last meeting. So we have a new meeting time on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. in alternating locations between our room in the basement here, B023, and the First People's House. So the locations are listed on the social media page and I think as well as on our website. Continued work is underway on an anti-cultural appropriation campaign and event. So stay tuned for more details on that. Happy to announce that we're working in collaboration with the campus community garden to provide some of the fresh harvested foods to Indigenous students on campus. And we're also in the process of hiring for 2 work study positions. Another announcement is that we have currently 2 spirit circles are being held every Thursday in the First People's House and between the Ceremonial Hall and room 160 from 2 to 3 p.m. And one last item, which is that the Political Science Department is hosting an open forum on October 29th at 2:30 in David Strong Building C118. So if you're on the poli-sci undergrad email list, you may have received this. You may not have, because I've heard that it hasn't actually made it out to everyone. So more on that. It's an opportunity to critically discuss the department's actions following a forum in the spring, which I was present at, and Samson as well, and others were also there. But the topic is related to concerns regarding hiring ethics within the department and lack of Indigenous course offerings, particularly at the 200 level, and more generally, the ones of commitments to decolonize the curriculum, like referencing the Indigenous plan that UVic has in place with pretty strict commitments to a timeline. And so if you consider yourself an accomplice to decolonizing the department, then I urge you to join on the 29th at 2:30 in David Strong, C118. And if you have questions, I will happily answer them.
Thank you. Anything further? Moving on to Pride. Is there a report from Pride today? Seeing none. Moving on to SOC. Seeing none. Moving on to the SSD.
Alright, I've got a couple of things to report. Instead of the outdoor activities we usually do once a month, we're doing indoor art activities because it sucks outside. So twice a month, we're gonna have we're gonna go to forecasts and let everyone experience some joy for once. We're hiring a resource coordinator, I think that's what the job title is. So that's ongoing. BC, the provincial government is currently working through an accessibility legislation act and community consultations ongoing. There was recently a town hall event in Victoria
communities in BC, and we've had several of our members attend, and it was awful in terms of actually engaging with disabled people whose legislation will impact. And there's a program where interested third parties can apply to host their own town hall forum and actually, I don't know, have like a real discussion about the accessibility legislation and what that means. And I'm hoping to bring that forward to the UVSS. That's an event that would actually matter politically. And I would love to see it happen. I was only recently made aware of it. I think the last town hall meeting is like mid-November. So I don't know how realistic it is, but it's an idea that I would love to collaborate with UVSS on, because it's not in like necessarily my or the SSD's capability to put on something of that scale. But UVic has this sizable population of students who have disabilities and would be impacted by legislation. So that's something to think about. And also, hopefully, maybe we're thinking about finally putting a ramp in outside of the SSD door, because it's like stairs up to the Society for Students with Disabilities, which apparently has been a problem for like years, and it's expensive. But that's being talked about again, so hopefully something will happen. That's it. Any questions?
Watts?
Do you think you could repeat what you want to cover with UVSS on? I think I just missed the piece that you want to cover.
I'm hoping that the UVSS would look into hosting one of the community town hall events, which would be a forum for discussion and feedback to the provincial government about the new accessibility legislation.
I think that's really a possibility. Thanks for bringing that.
Devlin?
Can you explain what the legislation is about?
It's an updated Accessibility Act.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to question period. There's no one in the audience today, but are there any questions from directors at this time? Yes.
How's the mud bank going? Because I walked by there the other day and there was 0 clean cups and about like maybe a quarter of what was originally there.
Dale can probably answer that, but I've seen it can be intermittent. Sometimes there's clean cups and sometimes there's not. I haven't spoken to the people who are helping cleaning it. I would like to check in with them and see how they're doing. Thanks for raising that point, though.
I've heard a lot of positive feedback about it. They didn't even require me asking about it. People just walked up to me and I was grabbing coffee and said, "It's a great idea, I love it," and all that. So I think it's a great. I hope it doesn't go to waste.
Robertson?
I've heard good feedback as well, and I did have noticed it empty a couple times. It's almost always on a Monday morning. It's because we don't have building attendants or staff that replenish it over the weekend. But actually, the last couple Monday mornings I've brought racks out and just full. But our building attendants typically start around 11 o'clock in the morning, and so that's really the time that it gets replenished.
Are there any further questions?
The poli-sci undergrad forum is a little short notice. I thought it was going to be held in the first people side. What happened?
Yeah, so the original forum came about from raising concerns to the department chair, and we had the understanding that it would probably be like a collaborative planning process, and then it was just planned like on a day where many students have class, like 2:30 on a Thursday, I believe it was. Tuesday? Yeah, so, and I think we had about 2 or 3 days notice, I recall, and it was just, like our concerns about, having an event space where there's like adequate accessibility and room, and but none of those concerns were addressed, and so here we are again, where actually the Indigenous undergrad rep for UPS is the person who actually spearheaded the whole, the fact that there is a meeting, because we hadn't heard any updates, and it's now mid-October, and we were told there would be one like in the fall, which, you know, it's starting to be fall, winter, so we're kind of wondering what was happening, and we were just told, like, didn't you hear? It was planned for October 29th at this time, and you should have received an email from the assistant on the PSU listserv, and that was not the case. We combed through our emails and nothing was there. So yeah, we've had multiple kind of glossing over of our requests, and we're trying to address this like power imbalance, and especially like the lack of kind of seeing eye to eye on things. And I think like even just the planning process itself kind of reflects where we're at with stuff. Despite some successes, like we now have the 200 level Indigenous politics course offered, which was something that like myself, Samson, and Skylar also brought up. So those are just a few things. It's very frustrating, and I think that the political science department has the opportunity to lead on campus because they engage with these topics of Indigenous issues and Indigenous politics, and I think I'd like to see that happen. That's why I'm so invested in this. So yeah, urge you all to come out and support, even if you're not a poli-sci student, just recognizing that it's setting an example. Especially since we do have an Indigenous plan in place and very strict commitments within that, and I don't feel that those are being upheld or really committed to. And I think having witnesses to see what those discussions actually look like and what the silencing of students actually look like is really important to change anything. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is it the Martlet going to be there? Because that could be really beneficial. And then also, at the last meeting, they kind of said like we're only gonna let 2 of you guys talk as representatives. Is like the same thing going to happen where just reps can talk?
We have no agenda that's been provided, I believe, but I think that they probably have one. We just haven't been told what the deal is. And also I think it would be really helpful if the Martlet was there, because I think last time, I don't know how many students, probably 50 or more than 50 students appeared, but there wasn't any coverage on the story.
Yeah, at the first meeting we went to, when the issue that we had originally raised was brought up, we went to a department meeting, and that's where only 2 reps could talk at, and it was the poli-sci undergrad reps, and then a lot of us like had to leave that room because the chair of the department wouldn't let us stay, but then that's why they held the forum was after that, because we had all been there, and I think there were multiple professors who had said they'd never seen like such a turnout to just a department meeting in like the years that they had been here, and that's why they held the forum. And I know that at least one of my professors, the forum was during their class. They canceled their class and they had their class, but they brought their entire class to the forum instead of just doing class that day.
Bird?
A different subject, if we're okay with moving to a different subject.
Is there anything further on that question?
So I'm just wondering what progress has been made as far as updating our policy on the website. My understanding was still that the HR policy is still on the website when it's actually being moved into the employee handbook, and so it can be misleading. I'm just wondering if there's been any progress as far as making sure that it's all up to date.
Mm-hmm. Are you directing that at myself?
I'm directing it at anybody who knows, but probably you. Yeah.
Okay, that's not in my portfolio. I know McGovern had mentioned something about wanting to update HR policy. I'm not sure if that's related to that or not. However, if you would like a change of something on our website like that, there's a work order form that we can fill out. If you send me the instructions, I'd be happy to do it for you.
Okay. Work order form
for Caitlin, our assistant.
Huh. Okay.
I'd also just like to add, I haven't really specified much about the HR policy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was a misinterpretation, but
No, I know. I just knew that you said something about it, and I thought maybe that was related because that's the first thing I've heard about it.
fair enough.
I actually had a question for McGovern. We had met a few days ago with the UVSP about reusable containers being utilized in the sub, and we were going to meet with some managers inside the sub, and I'm just wondering if there's an update on that at this time.
I did. I talked to the general manager about it today, and I'm going to send them a follow-up email within the next few days. But it's very possible, and I think the meeting's going to happen as soon as we set it up. So probably very likely next week.
Well, thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, moving on to 7B, new business. The first motion is moved by Eaton. Could I please have a seconder for this motion? Turker. Be it resolved that the board accepts the resignation of Avria Cristal as pride representative. Would you like to motivate?
Sure. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but basically Avria is resigning, and we'll be looking for a new pride representative, which the nominations will be open at the next board meeting.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this motion? McGregor?
Just to clarify, nominations, like, they'll choose a rep.
Yeah.
People can't.
Yeah.
Right. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none. All in favor of motion 1? Right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. Moving on to motion 2, which was added to the agenda just earlier. I have some, perhaps you can pass this around. I have it typed out so you folks can see it visually. But while people pass it around, could I please have a seconder for this motion? Richards. While it gets passed around, Watts, would you like to motivate?
May I? I think it's really important that the Greece Sports Center and Food Banking Free Store are added as sub-occupants, and accordingly Viper is removed as a sub-occupant as they're no longer. Yeah, I think it would have been helpful for them to have been added before, and it was kind of like overlooked, but the services have grown as policy hasn't completely followed, so I think this is a good measure to avoid missing people in consultation in the future.
Becca?
Since we're audio recording, can somebody read the entire motion out?
Yeah, sure. I can give them Yeah. Be it resolved that Board of Directors Policy, Section 4, Part 2, Sub-Occupants Committee, Terms of Reference, is amended as follows. Essentially, it's striking Viberg from the membership list and adding the Peer Support Center and the Food Bank and Free Store. As well, if the audio quality is sufficient today, a copy of the minutes will be uploaded along with the audio recording. Yeah. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of motion 2? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. Moving on to motion 3, which was moved by McGovern.
Perfect. I also printed off some copies as well. So I printed off 10, so I'm hoping that it can be 2 per person.
Sorry, could I have a seconder for this motion? Turker? Would you like to motivate McGovern?
Yeah, I would. It's actually kind of a unique motion in that I'm bringing it forward, but I have some mixed feelings about it. So for those of you that don't know, on September 23rd, I brought forward a motion to spend up to $9,000 from the Major Capital Fund to purchase a replacement convention oven for the operations of the main kitchen and catering. And what had happened was it was all ready to go. We had the consultants take a look. They said it was working. And when it was shipped, there was something overlooked, which was that it was an old convention oven from a long time ago. And so the fitting was actually 3 inches too big, so it won't fit. And we just found out about this on Friday late afternoon, and we weren't sure whether or not this was even going to be able to become a motion until probably 4 p.m. tonight. And so I'm bringing this forward because I do think that it's a really important conversation the board has to have. I think that this is a very critical component to the main kitchen, and I think the main kitchen supports a about 5 different food service operations, Felicitas Catering being there, the Health Food Bar, and the Grill. And so it is really important that they do get the opportunity to succeed in every capacity possible. And I think that obviously this is unfortunately an additional expense, but I think it's an expense that the board should consider, because at the end of the day, without this convention oven, it will limit the capacity of the main kitchen, which is currently very overworked at the moment, being the middle of September or middle of October. So with that being said, I'm very glad that the general manager is here. He actually partook in some of the ordering of it. So if anyone has any more detailed questions, I'm sure he'd be able to answer them. But with that being said, I think that it's worth it to support this, and I'd like to open the floor to questions.
Any discussion?
You can go ahead.
No, you first.
I think you might answer it, so I don't want to ask a question that you can answer.
Just not sure if it was made clear that it's a stackable convection oven, so there's 2 of them. One of them was completely broken down and was beyond repair, which is why we came to the board for the second one. Or for the bottom portion of it was working fine, and actually is still currently working fairly well. It is 1996 was when it was purchased, so it's 23 years old. But unfortunately, just the way they've evolved this unit of convection oven, it's the same brand, just the current model or whatever. But the way the flue, the way the gases and stuff gets evacuated from the unit, they need to line up both the top and the bottom, and these are just over the years they've migrated the flue and everything. And so beyond being not being made deeper, it's also just the flues don't match up, which is the main reason why we need a brand new unit for the bottom, even though it still technically functions. It can be salvaged for parts, which will help in the future. But right now we have 2 kind of working ovens that don't stack, which don't help us. And so we still, there's not room to have 2 side-by-side convection oven under the hood system because they're gas. They have to be stackable, and we need 2 to do our larger functions for sure. So that's that. This is kind of a need to one kind of thing. If the board can say no, can't use capital funds, then we would just use operating. We need to have those ovens working. But there is lots of money still in the major capital, so hopefully it's not
Blecka?
How much money is currently in the major capital fund?
That might be a question for the general manager. I had brought the forms last time. It should be the same, but
a quick little
perfect.
update from last time.
Perfect.
So still, it is nice to round or to leave next year's board with a sizable balance. We started off the year with $224,000 in that fund. It's going to get almost $200,000 just this year, so probably about $424,000. We've estimated that we will want to use about $200,000 this year, so it's basically what is being put in. So leaving next year with still over $200,000. Yeah, there's a whole list of things that we've already approved in the Schedule 1 underneath. It's got maybe something of both convection ovens here at the bottom. The Cinecenta was approved at the last board meeting. ZAP additional improvements are still sort of TBD. Subdex POS is still TBD, and it still leaves another $26,000 for potential stuff that we may or may not need. But this is kind of the nature of a lot of our equipment is starting to age. There will be these kind of requests over the next 5 years or so as we get new equipment as that old stuff starts breaking down.
Blecka?
So did we just notice the flues didn't line up when we went to put the oven in, or was there like any kind of pre-buying checklist?
We, the rep for Garland is the maker of that. They were the ones that were here and said, this is the oven you need.
Okay.
And they, because a lot of the parts on our existing unit have been replaced numerous times over the years, doesn't really look as old as it is, and so they didn't, if it was all just original pieces, they would probably be more, where they come to mind that it's over 1996 unit, but because it's been rebuilt for one of the parts already, it just wasn't as obvious to them. So I have been pushing them, the rep and the company for compensation, because it would have been a little cheaper, and it was something that we did talk about, Brad, the food service manager, and I, about replacing both units at once. But just sustainability wise, and the bottom one was still functioning, and so it's not best to just to go with the one. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but so there will be some. I'll still work on them with some. I'm sure we can not charge us rate for them the next one, or something, like $500, and probably some installation help. But
James?
Yeah, I know it's a really important night for Canada, but I think it's important that everyone pays attention, not only because you're making significant financial decisions, but also it's really distracting for everyone else.
Is there any further discussion? Becca?
So, you said a lot of the bottom parts salvageable, so like, are we gonna keep the parts for when it eventually falls apart again?
yeah.
Cool.
All right.
I'm in favor of buying a new oven.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of motion forward? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Moving on to old business. Oh, the motion carries. Sorry, my mistake. The motion carries. Old business. Motion 5. It was not my intention to have this motion on the agenda tonight. We discussed it at last meeting. It was fulfilling a student vacancy on a university committee. Unfortunately, we were unable to fill it. So I have taken it upon myself to be on this committee. So if we could simply not second this motion, and we can move in camera at this time, unless someone else would like to be on this committee, which I would be happy about, and we can have a seconder. Seeing none, and a seconder. All right. Could I please have a motion to move in camera? Alawalia. For a seconder, Bleka. Right. All in favor of moving in camera? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Would you like that abstention noted in the minutes? All right. All right. The motion carries.
Oh, that's okay. I saw it like just now today. Thank you. You're welcome.
And that's in